Hello and welcome, heroes. Orcs worship Grooms, the one-eyed god of slaughter, and are savage, bloodthirsty marauders. Today, we delve into their lore and combat mechanics to ensure the next time you run them in your games, you can get the most out of them, leaving your player characters begging for mercy. Unfortunately, Grooms doesn't give a fuck.
No.
Hello, welcome, heroes, to the Crit Academy. I am your host, Justin.
And I'm your guest, Garvin.
I'm your co-host, Ian.
I'm your co-host, Brandon.
Yeah.
Red text is you.
We hope to inspire you with creative content that you can bring with you on your next adventure.
All right, and with that,
Shameless plug.
hey, Vegeta, what does a Kickstarter say about our funding level?
What? It's over 9,000!
What? 9,000? There's no way that can be right.
Sure there is. We are extraordinary. If you are watching the live stream, you're only 4 more days to back our Extraordinary Expeditions Kickstarter. We will certainly get funded, but we would love to reach any of our stretch goals that we can. I think our next one is creating 4 unique classes, so we're super excited for that. So please consider checking it out. You can find links in the dibbly-doo somewhere around here with the wife controlling that. So please consider doing that. Help us push us over that thread and maybe reach those stretch goals. Ellie, please edit this out of the podcast because it'll be too late.
That's a good reason.
All right, so on to our main topic. I just realized I duplicated the beginning, so I feel bad.
Quick question for you.
What?
Right? How long ago did you plan the over 9,000 thing?
I did not plan that. I think
I guess for like a month ago, you're like to
Alicia
Alicia,
did.
like, hey, when it reaches 9,000, I'm gonna do Vegeta thing.
Well, she did it for the she did the one for 8,000 on the Kickstarter. All right, so I want to take a second to welcome Garwin. Thank you so much for joining us. Garwin is our Emerald patron. So one of the benefits of becoming an Emerald patron is you get to join us every 3 months or so as a guest host. So Garwin, would you like to tell the people a little bit about yourself?
Well, not really much to tell. I play in some of Justin's games. I played in the what was it, The Hunt a bit ago.
Mm-hmm.
Quite fun.
Yeah.
I occasionally run a bit of D&D here at home and play with the guys as well. Been doing it for, what's it been now, 4 or 5 years or so. Usually been fun.
There's a reason why we're talking about orcs today, isn't there?
Yes,
Why is that?
I do love them to an unhealthy degree.
That's an understatement.
The truth of where Orogs come from is right there. He loves orcs a little too much.
Yep.
So why don't you start us off with some of the basic information of the lore? He's going to Garwin's going to be feeding us tidbits of lore as we discuss the combat mechanics of the different orcs in the monster manual.
Well, I'll just start this out with a quick shout out to Ruth. Love you, babe. She's in the chat. But yeah, well, how would we do a quick questionnaire in the way to do this? Specific topics, the broad thing of all of our kind. Anything you'd like to know about them specifically?
For me, or are you asking the audience? Because this would be a good question for audience members too, that we can answer as we go
either
on.
Or.
One of the things that I've always wanted to know about orcs, obviously they follow Grooms, but I don't think they didn't always follow Grooms. They weren't born following Grooms. Is that correct?
Actually, Groomers created them, so...
Yeah, Grooms created them.
I didn't know that. So, like, did he birth them?
There's
from
a reason they look like Grooms, and he looks like them.
Yep.
That's a fun question.
What is orcs cooking like? Ooh, that's a good one, Alex. Bomb.
Well, that depends on the orc. Grey orcs, they're a bit more sophisticated. They might have some seasoning here and there, but all orcs are carnivorous. They don't have any greenery. They just can't digest it properly. Funnily enough, though, unlike normal monsters, they actually prefer normal game meat and not humanoids. they find humanoids kind of bland, which is kind of funny when you consider the fact that for example, mountain orc cooking, it's described as you're not sure if you're eating something that tastes like shoe or if they just threw the shoe in there.
A little extra.
I do
Yeah.
gotta
And
add
here-
to the
And here was roleplaying the orc was saying, drow, the other dark mate.
so Karens don't taste good.
No, they
If
don't
you've,
like it. They
had the
will
pleasure-
eat humanoids, when they can here and there, but they don't prefer it.
That's fair.
If you've had the pleasure of buying the D&D cookbook,
Yeah.
they
The
have
orc jerky.
they have orc bacon in there, and it is
Oh, it's so good.
so good.
Delicious.
So, one of the things that's really common with orcs is they are in D&D, at least up to my knowledge, which is very limited compared to the vast font of knowledge in Garwin's brain. That they are often treated as kind of a plague on civilization. They fight amongst themselves a lot, mostly to prove strength, but sometimes to get some raid and looting in, right?
Yep.
But they do have a love for close combat, and they plunge, furiously into the thick of battle without giving any thoughts to retreat or surrender.
Yeah.
Very
How's
often it is the case, though it depends on which god they follow more. For example, if they follow Ilneval, I can never get that name right. Ilneval. What's that?
Who
I
is?
don't remember. If they
No,
follow
none of
him,
us know. You're fine.
yeah, it's the orc god of war and strategy. If they follow him, they'll have actual strategy in their fights. Like they're the type that might have actual siege equipment, for example. Might actually divert their forces here or there. Might split apart to come behind the enemy while distract them over there. There's when an orc priest of Ilneval appears in an orc horde, their strategies get, if not to human levels, then maybe a little beyond it sometimes too, depending on his proficiency.
Yeah, that you actually pointed out something really interesting there, that they specialize in like siege equipment. That's not something that I've ever actually thought about in my campaigns with orcs. I don't think I've ever given them a catapult, but I just love the idea of them flinging like corpses of the dead people they've slain back at the enemies they're attacking.
Yeah.
Like, hey, you lost your guard, here's it back.
Yeah.
Because
Like probably one of my favorite tactic is when you have, for example, mountain orcs. They're one of the few main orc races that actually use animals and monsters, but they don't train them. They believe that by training them, they take the savagery out of them. So they just have wild monsters of any kind you can find in mountains or hills, everywhere from like low-tier dragons to manticores or something. One of my favorite tactics is probably taking a catapult or a trebuchet, strapping it to a mammoth, and then having the orcs ride the wild creature to battle while tossing stones and whatnot.
Oh, that's
So
cool.
they do need Orogs with them in the colony to actually make that equipment. Mountain orcs are too dumb to actually make this kind of stuff.
And to be
But if
clear,
you have Orogs in there, they can make it.
if I recall correctly, Orogs are half orc, half ogre.
Yep.
We'll touch on that.
Or either that, or they're somewhere in the 5,000th generation of the line, and an orc fucked an ogre at one point.
So when
They're
an
so
orc rides,
interbred with Orogs that they just pop out now again and randomly.
when an orc rides a dire wolf, it's really a flip of a coin whether or not that becomes its next meal.
Yep. And
So
they love it.
we had a really good question here from Andrew. It says, what is orc schooling like? I imagine not in depth, but they have a language and understand at least basic math. So surely they have something.
Yeah. And again, that also depends on the type of orc. Like a half orc, that's a flip of the coin wherever the fuck they're born. So we can only talk about that. And the grey orcs, they have in-depth religious teachings, as they are like religious fanatics. They come from a world which they already took completely over, and they're the dominant race there. And as you can imagine, Grooms is pretty fucking powerful over there.
Right.
It's kind of fun. So yeah, they
Makes you keep his eye
they
on his
basically teach
targets.
their kids and whatnot about like religion and whatnot, and some maybe math here, like how to count to 10. But mountain orcs don't really teach at all. Really, they just whatever the fuck you can learn. They might teach you this or that, but they don't really care. Orogs, they're probably the ones that might have education centers, but it depends on the Orog.
Ian, this axe you chop. I teach you to slash tomorrow.
Yeah. Brilliant.
So to my understanding, and Brandon can probably touch on this about they don't really have they don't really build settlements of their own. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Orcs don't build settlements on their own. Instead, improving existing shelters with crude fortifications. They prefer to settle in natural caves or structures abandoned by others, more skillful races. Orcs can manage simple ironwork and stonework, but they are lazy and grasping, preferring to take by force the tools, weapons, and goods that other people have made.
So can you give us some kind of expansion on that? Like what is there like a popular orc, area that they took over that wasn't something that they built?
Well, probably the what are the mountains called? The big ass mountains at the very top of the map.
Everest?
No,
No, not the
spine, I
in
think is what it's called.
yeah, the spine of the world. Yeah, they've taken over the vast majority of them. In fact, that's where they've basically resided in all of history so far. And there is an orc king that's managed to get together a bunch of fucking tribes, and they have a settlement that's about 5,000 orcs strong, and that is terrifying.
Right.
Though the only thing I really know about him is that the lore states that he seems to not want to go to war with the race around him, which I find odd. And honestly, I suspect that he's probably not an orc and has been replaced by something or someone, and they're being manipulated.
It's a doppelganger.
Yeah.
So we got another question here before we move on to combat tactics from forgive me if I mispronounce it, Israeli Denala. Israel Denal. I apologize if I slaughtered that. What type of weapons are more natural / better suited for orcs? Because right now, that's mostly in their stat block is like great axe and javelin.
They would prefer axes, mauls. They would prefer those over swords. Like if they find a fancy sword, they might pick it up, but they don't have a preference for it. They prefer weapons that they don't need to be overly skillful in, and they can use their strength with. So that's one of the reasons why they have javelins instead of bows, for example. Though, honestly, bow is a more strength-based weapon. They might also have throwing axes if you can get them those.
You can yeet the bolt yourself.
Yes.
I'm not picturing the orcs as the Scotsmen of the D&D world.
A good example of an orc weapon is the mountain orcs' invention of the double-bladed axe. They just went, axe? Blade here. What if I stick blade on other end? Ha!
That's great.
More blade.
I love that.
So
All right.
If I remember right, they also invented weapons of slaying, which are magical items.
That doesn't fit the orc. Orc and invented just doesn't go together for me in my
Not
head.
really, but also think of it this way: weapons of slaying. Like a weapon of slaying, it's quite literally just that specific thing. Screw it.
All right, so let's talk about some combat tactics. We're about 15 minutes in here. So we're going to start with the generic orc. We've talked a lot about the lore and stuff of orc. So in everything we're going to be talking about is going to be in the Monster Manual, 5th edition. The orc really only has a great axe and a javelin. Those are their only two weapons. But what really lets them stand out is their aggressive feat, which means as a bonus action, the orc can move up to its speed towards a hostile creature that it can see. So to me, that needs to be the core of their combat style in the game. So the question is how do we get the most out of a great axe and a javelin and this aggressive feat? Because they don't have multi-attack, not the basic orc at all.
As they move up to their speed, free?
As a bonus action, yes.
Ooh.
I mean, something to note about the orc, that's their version of a commoner. Yeah. Like the orc in the Monster Manual. That's their commoner. And he's pretty fucking strong.
For real commoners. So, and they're not super bright. They got intelligence of 7, but the fact that they're aggressive means that they can close a 60-foot gap on their turn.
Oh,
and
yeah.
That, my friend, is what makes them terrifyingly deadly.
I'm going to get you.
Like, they see a distance and they go, I'm going to go that distance.
Yeah, and what's cool though is I ran into in one of the games I was in. The DM had 6 orcs, and I ran into them and I couldn't reach them. So they all threw javelins at me. And now in my head, I didn't expect that. I expect them to all charge, which, you know, I could hopefully defend. But no, they threw javelins at me, and the javelin, while it doesn't do as much damage as the greatsword,
Doesn't matter when there's 10 of them.
when there's 10 orcs around you throwing javelins, you're boned. So for me to really get the most out of these, yes, swinging the axe does more damage, but I think if you really want to make them a terrifying threat early on at a half CR, having them focus on throwing their javelins all before they run in.
Oh yeah, like
This is my
the only-
javelin. I need it, Chuck.
like, the only orc that probably wouldn't do that are followers of Baktru, as they are a bit stupid.
Oh, they are?
Baktru is probably the dumbest god in any pantheon. He's so dumb. His father Grooms and his mother Luthig need to tell him how to put his avatar into play and when to do it.
That's funny. So is there any, the basic orc, the commoner orc, as Garwin says, is kind of basic. It really just has the aggressive, but that gives them a huge advantage, especially if they ready and wait until the adventurers fall within that, because if the adventurers are hunting them and chasing them, they're going to get to the point where they're going to be limited by how far they can get, right? And so they're going to run.
Look at their wisdom. They're pretty wise.
So yeah, they're smart. I wouldn't say the orcs are smart, but their leaders, their commanders or whatever are tactical masters. Yep. So they would give the command to not charge in and just swing, but to throw axes or chuck their javelins, which I think is really, really great.
Chuck the chucks.
So so going up from that, we've got 3 more to talk about. Next, I want to talk about the Orog, because this is in my opinion is like the next step up, which is probably often kind of the commander of the little squads, like a squad leader. What can you tell us about Orogs?
Well, Orogs are what happens when what's the male orc or a female? Fuck, I always get this wrong. They're what happens when a male orc and a female ogre breed. Or at this point, whenever the fuck it happens to happen, because orcs and ogres have bred so interchangeably that an orc can just pop up randomly now.
Yeah. You get an Orog and you get an Orog.
They're quite hilarious. Though they do have cities in the Underdark where they have actually become pretty prolific smiths and crafters. They're probably behind only the drow and the dwarves down there now. Which is actually also why they come with full plate, because they make that shit themselves.
And it's worth noting too that the Orog's intelligence is 12, not 7.
Yeah, which is way higher. Which is why I in my world, they're treated as like squad commanders or whatever, because while they aren't the strongest of the orcs, like the war chief or the Eye of Grooms, the fact that they have a 12 intelligence means they can strategize very, very well. And using those javelins to their benefit. They also get multi-attack. So now we can combine that aggressive with the multi-attack, which, because they got a plate armor, they could literally swing at one person, then just run and swing at another, which I feel like would make for a lot of dynamic combat.
They also got an 18 strength and con, so
they're going to choke a bitch. What do you think, Brandon?
It sounds terrifying, and I don't want to mess with it.
Okay.
Like I could probably imagine an Orog running into the fray, tackling the party's biggest player, grappling him, getting to the ground, then having his others come around and then start beating the guy up.
I think that works really well with the Orog because it has multi-attack. It can grapple and shove. So I can totally see the Orog running in, grappling somebody, shoveling them in the ground, and then commanding all the aggressive orcs with their aggressive feature to charge to get to it and attack it with advantage while it's pinned to the ground.
Yeah.
And that is terrifying as a player.
Yeah, stay down.
If even though their CR is low, if one of these Orogs chokes you and then you pin them to the ground, and then it commands everyone death, and like 6 of these bastards who are doing different fights turn around and all charge and swing. That is a moment of, oh my god, my character's going to die. And that's where aggressive becomes so potent, I think. where you can use weaker creatures to just overrun the powers. Even if a paladin is in plate armor with a shield at 18 AC, and you've got 6 of those swinging with advantage on them, at least 2 or 3 are probably going to hit. So
Yeah.
it's terrifying to think about.
Like
So
20 AC ain't gonna protect you forever.
so let's talk about the Orc Eye of Grooms. Can you tell us a little bit about them and their lore?
Well, an Orc Eye of Grooms is what happens when an orc goes onto the battlefield, kills an elf, and goes, "I killed this elf for Grooms," and then a Grooms gives them either he gives them an omen, which might be an extreme headache, which is known as Grooms' head pat, where he just pets their head and they get an extreme headache, or some other kind of omen, and then they pluck their own eye out as a sacrifice to Grooms to symbolize his loss of an eye to an elf. And then they get their clerical powers. Because Orcs Eye of Grooms are clerics.
Yes. So, and that's really interesting. So, this one is actually a CR2, so it's significantly higher than a regular orc, but is the same CR as an Orog. But I would argue that these are stronger than the Orog, not in like physical might, but in functionality. Because first of all, they get ring mail and a shield, so they got an AC of 16, not quite as high as the Orog, but the fact that they can spellcast makes them very, very potent. Starting
Blessed
with
and spiritual weapon are scary.
Oh yes, so let's get in that. So they have Groomsh's Fury, which instantly means their weapons do extra damage, which is fantastic. Though in my mind, I feel like there should be some sort of type with that. It's just extra weapon damage. I feel like there should be more to that, but
Yeah, there really should be, but I'm
that's just
not
how
a
it
game
is.
mechanic.
So let's talk about their spellcasting. They get guidance, resistance, and thaumaturgy. First of all, the thaumaturgy is great for intimidation checks and really showing that it's a magical creature. But topping it off with just being able to toss out resistance to their allies is fantastic, especially if it works with an Orog or another orc to protect it. But bless. That is single-handedly one of the most dangerous features to give to orcs. Because as we talked about, the Orog choking a bitch and pinning them down is already a problem. But now blessed to those orcs that now not only have advantage but have a D4 on top of their attack roll, you're going to demolish, even if it's a barbarian pinned to the ground. You are gonna fuck his shit up. And it is terrifying. But that also means that it is more of a support character from a distance, right?
Yeah. Like an Orc Eye of Grooms, his job, support the group and yell out commands if there isn't anyone smarter around.
Yes.
That's why thaumaturgy also comes into play.
Yep. That's really, really good.
And I'm guessing that's not a high bar to hop over.
That's how I see command.
Now, one of my favorite tactics with the Orc Eye of Grooms is that when there's a particularly big raiding party and there's 2 of them, I have one of them have less, but then I give another Bane.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So you have one with Bless and one with Bane, and they work together, one to buff their allies, the other weaken their enemies. Ooh, that is such a nasty combination, and I love it.
My favorite thing to do, Bane on the Barbarian and the other strong people that are frontline fighters, and Bless on the Orc and the other Orcs, and try and grapple that Barbarian down and just surround him.
I love it. And see, you go for the Barbarian. I personally would go for somebody not wearing armor at all that's not buff. So for me, when I think Orog commanding orcs to attack, he's charging after a spellcaster to choke a bitch. He's not messing around. But
like, the main reason I go after the Barbarian, he's a health sponge, and he's least likely to resist Bane.
It's true.
Ooh,
yeah, he disappears like, your party just lost their meat shield. What are you going to do?
So the other thing that makes the Eye of Grooms interesting is you mentioned spiritual weapon combination.
Yeah.
So we talked about using spells like Bless and Bane to buff and debuff. So they're going to want to keep their distance. So using spiritual weapon allows them to engage in the combat. So I have a question for everyone. If he casts spiritual weapon, does the Groom's Fury apply to that? Because I've always had it apply. But I don't know it specifically says
it would apply, since I've always looked at it this way. Groom's Fury is Groom specifically blessing this creature. And this creature is using the power it gets from Grooms to summon spiritual weapons. So why wouldn't it?
Right. That's
Like, spiritual weapon is just Grooms' power. So why wouldn't it have the
blessed.
blessing the creature
That's
has?
a good point.
I mean, it does say
My inner
damage
rules.
when it hits with a weapon attack, and it is a weapon.
No, it doesn't.
Spiritual weapon. It has the word weapon in it.
But it's not
I'm like,
actually. But it's not actually a weapon. It's a manifestation
Of
of
a
a god's
weapon.
power. It just looks like a weapon.
If I grab a stick and hit someone, it's still a weapon.
I think he's talking about for 5e mechanic purposes.
Yeah.
I got you. I'm with you, boss.
And for the record, that is my inner rules lawyer speaking or anything else.
So, but the other thing that they can do is augury, which basically allows them to get insight into what's going to happen, which I think is a very good way for a DM to fix a setting or fix a
Oh, yeah.
situation. So if my player characters are rushed,
What?
I just sound like you had the look of you bastard on your face.
No, I was reading the spell. I didn't understand it.
So the orc, prays to Grooms, gets this augury, and it says they have, they have a what is it, a woe, or what's the good one? Wheel. Good result. So for me as the DM, that means every DC just went up for the players. And that's the way I kind of interpret those. I would love to hear what your thoughts are on that, Garwin.
So I was reading a rather intriguing comment here, and he found it rather strange that half orcs have orcish resilience, but full orcs don't.
Yes,
that's me.
That is something that I've always found it strange personally, because it just shouldn't be a thing. Like, they should both have it. It's orcish resilience.
It's in the name.
Like, come on, man. Like, if you want to differentiate them, then give the half orc something that's more like based on willpower or intelligence, not that. The only difference between a half orc and an orc, literally, even physically, the only single difference is their mind. That's the only difference. There is no other difference.
Yeah.
We got an awesome question in chat here, and I would love to hear your thoughts. When Grooms had his eye taken out by Corellian, where did the eye go?
Well, where it went initially is not really known, but one thing that is known is that Luthig eventually got her hand on it, and then gave it to, I don't remember, the primordial earth god guy, to keep it so that, because he was having an affair with him, so that Grooms couldn't, go after him in case he found out.
I see. That's
Helia had it before that. She left a bunch of crumbs for Grooms to find eventually, but Luthig got there first.
So what you're saying is I need to create a legendary artifact like the Hand of Vecna, but the Eye of Grooms.
I think it's been done, actually.
Has it been done in 5e?
Good question. Let me check.
And like official content, not homebrew. But yes, okay. So we're kind of running out of time. So honestly, the Orc Eye of Grooms is one of my favorites because it's so versatile with the resistance and the bless and the command. Once again, sit becomes very terrifying when you're surrounded by 6 orcs who can immediately charge after you and swat you with advantage. Like, it's terrifying, and there's
like,
just
you
so
could
much
even look to the spellcaster in the party if it's a wizard with a staff and go drop it.
Ooh, I like that. Goodbye, component pouch or arcane focus.
Kneel.
Ooh, that's a good one too. I like it. All right, so let's talk about the last one in the monster manual, which is the big bad chief, the war chief. So, as with everything else, I noticed he's got a spear and not a javelin. Anybody else notice that?
Yep.
I don't know why did they do that change.
Because his name's Chuck.
It's probably because Grooms' signature weapon as a god is the spear.
Okay. So then why don't they all use spears instead of javelins?
Because spear is more finesse than strength.
Really?
And
I thought they're both strength weapons.
Yeah.
Anyways, what we want to focus on is their battle cry feature. So they get battle cry, which basically means each creature of a war chief's choice that is within 30 feet of it that can hear it and is not already affected by it can gain advantage on attack rolls until the start of the war chief's next turn. This comes back, and it gets to attack with a bonus action. So this comes back to having an intelligent creature on the battlefield issuing commands to demolish one person, because that's the
Yeah.
problem I think that we do as dungeon masters. We tend to, there's 6 guys, let's spread them out evenly among
Yeah.
the characters.
Like really, only follows or Baktrue would do that.
Yeah,
'Cause they're dumb.
orcs with leaders aren't going to do that. They are going to say, "Oh, that's the biggest threat. Attack!" And they're all going to use their aggressive movement and go after that one enemy, which in this case is probably Brandon, because the way he's looking at me, because that's the way they would fight. Now some may or may not listen. You might get a few, dabblers, but and I mean, they're no different than hobgoblins in the fact that they will work underneath somebody to get something done.
Yeah.
What are you thinking about over there? He's got some interesting looks on his face. Brandon, what you thinking about?
The horrifying fury of the war chief.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's very terrifying, and once again, it has multi-attack, so it can do the 2 extra attacks. It also can throw its spear and then charge and aggressively rush and attack, which I think gives it a lot of benefits as well. But
Also, the reason it's so strong is because all orc war chiefs are blessed by grooms, because they managed to get to that position.
That's what, and once again, you're throwing a spear that now also gets the Groomsh's fury, right? So everything is just better with Groomsh, apparently.
Which actually, that little bit actually made me realize why they have a spear and the others don't. Is because they stand as the tribe's head, and they basically represent Groom's might. That's why they have a spear, his weapon.
What if the orc war chief threw his spear at one of the party members and hits them, and then the Eye of Grooms uses command to say throw it back?
That's funny. Throw it back. I need it. And deliver it. So overall,
Bring me Chuck.
overall, I really think what it comes down to with getting the most out of the orcs in the 5th edition monster manual is that you want to have them focus on a command that a command structure, even if it's just one leader, and that leader is another orc. The command structure allows them to work together in unison, because they're not going to do that otherwise. When you're deciding and building your combat encounters, take that into consideration. Even if you're going to do 5 orcs and 1 orc is the leader, give them one of the feats or something to make him stand out. Give him a different weapon. Maybe he's, pretends to be a war chief and is wielding a spear and really shouldn't be. There'd be a great opportunity for lore leaking there too, right?
Oh yeah.
So
depending on what god he follows, he might have a different weapon.
Yeah, and that's really
Ilnwald would have a longsword. Baktrue would just be his bare hands. Grooms has a spear.
Ooh, I love that. I love the barehanded orc.
Oh yeah.
Big and green, purple pants. Anybody?
Really?
Yeah. All right. So, is there anything else you wanted to touch on before we move on to our unearthed tips and tricks there, Garwin? We're kind of running out of time.
Yeah, sorry.
No, you don't gotta apologize. It ain't you. It's not.
It's a habit. I did it again. I'm an apologetic person.
Yeah, that's all right.
But yeah, I had a bunch of ideas, but now it's a time constraint.
That's welcome to our world where we want to talk
imagine
for
that.
hours. We can't.
Yeah, it's such a pain.
Well,
but orcs, they are probably the only race I've come to, an intelligent race I've come to in D&D, that are it's probably the only race that lack the concept of racism.
Because you're all beneath them.
Oh, I was just saying,
No.
everybody, right?
The thing about orcs is that they're strength sexual.
Oh my god.
Yeah. If you manage to beat them up, you're equal with us now. Now we're gonna fight you harder. Oh hey, you aim stronger, but join forces. There's only a single race in all of D&D that they will not help in any way. They won't even take them as slaves, and that's elves. The point of an elf is to die. That is its entire point. They don't even take them as slaves. They just kill them.
And orc woman just walks up, punches him in the face, and is like, I seem to be aroused.
Yeah. Orcs, usually in our society, women are a bit beneath them. That's only because in general, orc women are a bit weaker. But if a woman beats up a male orc, he's equal to the boys now. No questions asked.
I love it.
Yep.
Equal.
I'm now thinking of like the YouTube channel Dungeon Bastard, where half-orcs come from.
Mm.
Go see
Oh,
guys in the bar.
That does remind me.
Hit that.
Like,
It's
yeah,
done.
Half orcs.
Wait. What kind of hit?
Yes.
People have a strange conception about half orcs. The only difference between half orcs and orcs is their brain, and even then, half orcs tend to overachieve because they're the only ones in the tribe that think they don't belong.
Yeah.
Literally,
all
they're the
feel that
only
way?
orcs, so they tend to overachieve to try and belong, even though no one else they cares. They just, dude, you're only one of us.
So Ian had wrote a really
It's like a
fantastic.
percentage of half orcs that are actually good.
Yeah.
Everyone else, every other
Us
half orc
garbage.
literally just lives in an orc tribe or is even a leader of an orc tribe.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
So I
Even
got at
though they
least
have a
looking
city
for
of half-orcs somewhere.
the meme that Ian had shared. So let us know when you're going to
Years
share
ago.
that. But he wrote up a meme, a Dennis meme that we're going to share here shortly, which is great. But in the meantime, I think that'll do it for our. She says it's coming now. Get ready to have your mind blown. Orc champion, I, Dennis, challenge you to single combat.
Really? Your name is Dennis.
Actually, directly translated from Orcish, his name is Lover of Skulls, with strong annotations of physical intimacy.
Are you seriously telling me his name is Skull Effer?
That's brilliant.
One of my favorite memes. Thank you, honey, for bringing that up. All right, so that'll do it for our main topic. Let us move on to our unearthed tips and tricks.